My patient is asking me to call his son, who he's not spoken to in 10 years, and tell him to come visit him before he dies.
When my mom physically died, it was like, but I was also so free and so liberated.
They're doing what is best for them. And at this point in their life, they think the best choice for them is to not have contact with me. Well, good for you. Like, it makes me cry.
Glad to have you, amazing viewer. Thanks for your continued support to my content. I appreciate that you are interacting with my videos. Your contribution is well appreciated. And if you're new here, consider subscribing to the channel. It's absolutely free of charge. I bring to you compilation of TikTok videos for educational purposes. After sharing a couple of videos on this channel on conflicts that parents are going through with their children, so now I decided to also bring a different perspective to it, and this is now listening to parents whose children have gone no contact from. So it's important that we also listen to them so that we know how do they feel about it. And even parents who have heard their children gone no contact, how do they cope with that? And you might be saying, my child has not gone no contact, so I have nothing to do with this video. I just want to let you know that these parents weren't prepared for this, but it happened to them, and I'm not wishing for it to happen to you. But you can also share this video to someone to whom it might be beneficial. Before we go further, based on the research, these are 4 main reasons that may lead to children withdrawing from their parents. Listen to this, very important.
4 reasons that your child is withdrawn from you. Number 1, they fear your judgment or labels towards them. Number 2, they think that your relationship is exhausting. Number 3, you're forcing your identity onto them. And number 4, you spend more time lecturing than you do listening.
Stop telling people who are no contact with their parents that they need to either make things right.
I think what a lot of people miss is that a lot of us didn't actually want to go no contact with our parents. We were forced to, because when a parent puts a child in a position where the child has to choose themselves and their mental health over the emotional, physical, spiritual damage that's being done to the child by the parent, it's one of the most difficult decisions that an individual can make. And I think it's really important to note that a lot of us understand the trauma that our parents went through prior to having us. We understand that they didn't have the resources that we have now. We understand that they didn't grow up the way that we have grown up with them. But all we have ever asked of them is to stop treating us as if what they've done to us has had no impact on us, especially when we've taken the time to understand how their lives and their parents have impacted them. I told my mother directly that I would rather be homeless on the street with nothing and have a healthy relationship with her than have her speak to me and treat me the way that she has. And it still didn't click for her. I went through some of the worst losses in my life, and she mocked the entire situation. So for me, when a parent kicks a child when they're at the low points that I have faced, you forced me to go no contact with you, because at that point, contact with you is causing me physical harm. A lot of people don't understand that a lot of us have very internal reactions to the hurt and pain that our parents have caused us that manifests itself in a physical nature. For me, I start shaking, I get night sweats, I start having panic attacks. It affects me to the point where I can't even mentally focus. And this has shown up in a plethora of my relationships, romantic relationships with partners who mirrored behavior of my parents, specifically my mother and my father. Well, yeah, those are my parents. I mean, I don't claim them. Anyway, what I'm saying is people have to push a lot of us to the point of no contact, because a lot of us want those very relationships that you guys are telling us that we need. That's your mom, that's your dad, that's your husband, that's your sister, that's your auntie, that's your uncle. Okay, and who am I? Who am I? Do I not matter in this equation? Because if I'm not going to matter to you, them, I have to matter to myself. Like, I can't just continue to put everyone ahead of me. And that's why a lot of us have chosen to go no contact. And there are plenty of us that are not going to come back for the inheritance because we never needed your money. We wanted your love, respect, kindness, protection, care. That's what we wanted. And I'm not saying that money doesn't matter, because it does, but what mattered more was love and respect for my parents, not what they gave me. And I've been an empath and a people pleaser. So, if I had to cut somebody off, I had to be pushed there because doormats put up with everything.
So why are my children no contact? My children are no contact because of a multitude of factors. Me being the primary character, I'm the one that they're no contact with. My life was one filled with trauma and was not one that was addressed with therapy. And when I had met their father, I was in a fast forward mode trying to achieve everything that I needed to achieve before I reached the age of 29, because I didn't think I would even live to be 29. That's what happens when you live a life of trauma. And even though there were red flags to his narcissistic tendencies, I did not have the strength or the self-esteem to be able to stand up to those red flags and end things, even though I did try to end things when we were engaged. So we got married and we had our first child. I actually left him before I found out I was pregnant with my first son. But once I found out I was pregnant, I was like, this is it. This is my life. I need to make it work. And so I did everything I could to make it work. And it wasn't until my youngest was not quite 2. And there were many times between that first time I left, or the second time I tried to end things, and the time my son was almost 2, that I had tried to end things, but something happened that I was like, no more. And it takes 7 to 8 times for someone who was abused to leave their abuser, and it was the 8th and final time. I did not realize that when you leave or when you discard a narc, that they will do everything in their power to make your life hell, and that was exactly what he did. And he did everything in his power to alienate my sons against me, but that's just part of the story. The other part of the story is, my being raised in a narcissistic family cult by a silent generation cult leader with boomer uncles. My upbringing was very strict, and so I was indeed very strict with my sons. I did choose my battles. I loved them very much. I don't think they doubted how much I loved them. But I did not have a typical family unit to model, to understand how to be a loving parent. That's for sure. The teen years became very difficult. I had tried to get therapy for my oldest multiple times when things were, showing that he needed therapy, and he would not open up to therapy. And so I tried the tough love, because tough love is what the parenting style was at the time when kids were acting out. And so that was very tough on him. And it was difficult. I tried to work with their father, who would always say, I'll talk with them. And that's what he did. He talked with them. They saw him every other weekend, and that was about it. At this point, when they were teenagers, my body started to implode with one chronic illness diagnosis after the other, and my rare disease symptoms started, but my doctors were stumped. So it was very difficult for my kids, because when I wasn't working, I was sleeping, I was resting. And so a lot of things came down on their shoulders, to help around the house and stuff like that. Their teen years probably were not fun and were filled with worry, I'm sure. So as they started to leave the nest, my oldest left very early. He left very early, and there was nothing I could do to keep him at home. When he wanted to come home, when he realized having heat and having hot water were important, of course, I let him come home. It was, they were difficult years. They were very difficult years, and I made lots of mistakes. I didn't know what to do. I really didn't know what to do. I thought that modeling not drinking, modeling not smoking, modeling not using drugs was what my kids would need. But that they needed more than that. So, eventually one by one, they started off into the world and each had their own ways and, and challenges. And I tried to support them the best I could with what I knew. And I made mistakes. When my oldest met his wife, She was very complimentary to me as a mom, saying I did such a great job raising my son, thanked me because he was such a wonderful guy and treated her so well. I should have at that point said, well, I wasn't the perfect mother. I should have at that point, brought up the fact that I made many mistakes. I didn't. I was raised to not bring up horrible things when something good is said. I wish that I had, because that would have opened some conversations at that point and allowed me to apologize to my son then. Things with my middle son were difficult health-wise, and we had some challenges where, I had to take him to the VA hospital when he was literally screaming in pain, and he was very, very, very sick. And, I was happy to take him to the hospital. I wished he wasn't, as sick as he was. And when he was going through treatment for what had happened, it was related to having mono when he was in high school. I was trying to get him to advocate for himself, and I was very forceful about that. And that caused him to go about 6 weeks without speaking with me. And I learned to be much less forceful about trying to get them to advocate for themselves, that they needed to make their own decisions. My youngest and I never really had these head-butting issues, honestly. My youngest did go to a boarding school for students that were gifted from his sophomore, junior, and senior years. And I advocated for that. His father did not support that. His father did not pay anything towards the tuition for that. And it was where my son needed to go because he's gifted. And, his response to his brothers having issues with me was that his child, his memories didn't reflect their memories. And he felt it was because he didn't stay home when he was in high school. So, their young adulthood was challenging in different ways. And I think one of the biggest ways was that I had never had a parent as a young adult. I separated from a foster family when I was 18. There was nothing they could tell me about what to do or who to see or anything about my life at that point, even if they tried. So I was very grateful to my son's girlfriend because she really made a change in his life, and he started making some really good decisions. And I was happy to celebrate in that and to see my son as I knew he could be. But they took that as me being obsessed with him. I was just happy to see him being such a great guy. So when, the horrible timing of events was that I suffered a brain injury. I had no one that I was living with, and the brain injury was a very severe concussion that I was knocked out for over 45 minutes, and it was a second concussion within a year. A second concussion within a year can kill you, and it almost killed me. Healing from that concussion took a very long time, and it took a lot of medical intervention, and it caused me to have a lot of behaviors that were very difficult for my oldest and his wife while they were expecting my granddaughter. It was difficult for them to process. And again, living alone, there was nobody to intercede. So when I went into a mania and a psychosis that made things even worse, I do believe that it went right down the pathway of their father telling them that, your mother's crazy anyway. Because when I would set boundaries when they were teenagers, they would say, Mom, you're crazy. You're just crazy. And the way they said it, I knew it came from someplace else. So as I was healing from the psychosis, which causes brain damage, as well as my severe concussion, it was extremely difficult. And my son and his wife tried to give me a second chance. I was undiagnosed at the time with PTSD. And it was thanks to my son telling me to have my therapist look at our communication that it brought about the PTSD diagnosis. This is going to have to go into a second video about why I'm estranged, but I think it's important. So that's the rundown of why I'm estranged, but we'll get to part 2.
People have a hard time understanding the grief that comes from being no contact or low contact with your parents. I've been asked, how can you be sad about something that you ultimately decided to do. And yes, I'm sad about the fact that we don't speak, but the grief comes more from what the relationship could have been if they were just more aware and more self-reflective. Like I'm grieving the fact that I don't have a place to go when I'm sad or scared or upset or even excited. Like they don't show genuine excitement for your achievements, so you don't feel like calling them when something great happens. And sometimes when I'm watching movies or TVs, I'll be triggered by something I see where a woman runs to her dad and he fixes everything. Or a mom and daughter are out for brunch and chatting and shopping and having fun. And I know those types of relationships are possible, and that I won't ever genuinely feel that way. And that's where the grief comes in. I know I can pick up the phone and start again, but I will be back at square one where I'm invisible and it's all about them.
This is the least favorite part of my job. My patient is asking me to call his son, who he's not spoken to in 10 years, and tell him to come visit him before he dies. Okay. So he said no, he's not going to come. I said that I respect that decision. Asked if he wants me to notify him whenever his dad does die, and he said yes. I have to go in here now and tell the patient that. Okay, I told my patient. Didn't go well. I told him that his son said that he doesn't want to come. The patient asked if I told him that he was dying. I said I did. He said, you should have told him that he had to come. I said, I'm not going to do that. I offered, if my patient wants to write his son a letter, that I will get it to him, but I said I can't tell you that he'll open it. My patient told me to get out. I love this patient so much, but it's just not my place to guilt trip someone into coming. I have no idea what this person was like the first 80 years of their life before I met them. As much as it sucks to get yelled at in that way, hopefully I did the right thing.
What happens when the parent you've gone no contact with for years finally dies? Honestly, everything. That's when your life begins. I know it's fucked up and I know it's wrong and sad, but when my mom physically died, it was like yeah, I was sad for a long time. I mean, because you're still grieving somebody that was a part of your life that you had love for, obviously, like they're your mom. But I was also so free and so liberated, and like, I think my personality opened up and started when my mom died. You know why? Because for years, unconsciously even, I was afraid of doing or saying things because of her judgment. I was afraid that she would still be watching and judging and criticizing because she fucking did. When my mother was alive and was schizophrenic, she was very delusional, and she would listen to our podcasts. She would listen to Your Mom's House and hear messages and write them down, which I later found her writings. She would like write down things that she thought she heard us saying about her. She would go through my Twitter and sometimes, try to respond to my tweets unsuccessfully because she didn't know how to fucking use Twitter because she was a boomer. But she also really tormented me emotionally. Towards the end of her life, she didn't leave her house or use the telephone because she was convinced that people were listening to her conversations. But what she would do, which was really cool, is mail me letters to like comedy clubs that I was working at. So like one time I literally was about to get on stage and I got a letter from my schizophrenic mom, like, telling me things like Hillary Clinton has, secret messages for you. You have to come talk to me. It's not like nonsensical ramblings of a schizo. And that would just like completely fucking shatter me and like ruin my whole, life. So when she was finally gone in physical form, I was free in many ways from her actual sort of torment and her her actual fucking torment. And then it just took years to get free of the internal parent, the voice that she still exists in my head. And it would be little things like I'd be parking. Like I remember I would be parallel parking and I would be like, why can't you parallel park? So fucking stupid. Like, what? That wasn't me, dude. That was like my mom's critical voice in my head. So long story short, I don't know, maybe when your no contact parent dies, you will feel bummed and sad because that's normal to grieve. On the other hand, you will be oddly relieved, maybe a little happy, and you may start to love life in a whole new way. And that is so fucking taboo to say, but I am so much happier now that my no contact, crazy schizophrenic mother is dead. Okay, Happy New Year.
Do I have any mothers out there whose children don't talk to them anymore? They've gone no contact with them and they're in pain and they don't understand why? Let me tell you why. My job is to hold space for my children, no matter what age they are. That means to validate their feelings, to validate their point of view, to validate their memories of how things took place. Why? Because how I remember it and how they remember it are two totally different things. They experienced something on their side. And it's not for me to say that how they feel is right or wrong. And how dare you feel that way? I did the best I could. I was the best parent I could be. And you just don't appreciate me. That's not how it works. Being in my adult children's lives is actually a privilege. They don't owe me anything. Just because I brought them into this world and spent the first 18 years raising them doesn't mean that they owe me the rest of their life. No, I'm grateful to be a part of my children's lives. I do the best I can to be as respectful of their boundaries, and they are the ones who set the boundaries, not me. They are. Do you want to know why? Because I did my job. Because I did my job. I raised them to be independent, responsible adults. Have they struggled? Of course they have. Everybody has. That's how we learn, through mistakes. But I respect who they are as adults. I respect their choice in partners. I respect how they choose to live their lives. I'm here if they ever need me. But it is a privilege to be a part of my adult children's lives. If you're struggling and your children have gone no contact, learn how to hold space for them. Stop trying to defend your actions and say, no, that's not how it happened. But I did this because I loved you. I did the best I could. All of these things. I gave you everything I could. Stop it. Stop it. You can either be right or you can be happy. Understanding your child's perspective, your adult child's perspective, is going to change everything. So show some respect for your adult children. Back the heck up and listen to them. Zip the mouth, hear what they have to say, hold space for them, and acknowledge that what they feel is valid. Then you'll start building a relationship with them. Their parents. I've received some version of this at least 200 times. So if you are a parent whose adult child has gone no contact with you, I just want to ask you a question. I know every situation is different, but have you considered the possibility that your adult child is tortured by the decision to go no contact? The fact that this is the most popular comment on my post leads me to believe that people don't take this decision lightly. If they're going low contact or no contact, it's a torturous decision. It's difficult. It leaves people feeling emotionally spent. And it shows that people who have gone no contact still want a parent. They crave it. They wish they had it. They want to have that, but they know they can't.
I don't know who needs to hear this, but if you're somebody that has adult children, your children are grown, right? And they've gone no contact or low contact. Maybe you have grandchildren that you don't get to see. It's not because your kids are punishing you for their childhood and the abuse that they endured. It's because they don't like who you are now. It's because you're still doing the same bullshit and they don't want their kids around it. Like, your adult child that no longer speaks to you is fully aware that you also had a very rough, shitty childhood, okay? And you're not to blame for all of the mistakes you made with them, but you are responsible for them. You are responsible for healing you. The only real apology is changed behavior. All an adult child wants is a relationship with a healthy parent that they can bring their own child around, for them to have a healthy grandparent. I've never met somebody my age who said, my toxic parent, went and did all of this work on themselves in therapy and they're super healthy now, but I still don't talk to them and I don't bring my grandkids around them because I'm punishing them for my own childhood. I've never heard that. It's always the parents that are unwilling to take responsibility and unwilling to look at their own part in things. That's just my opinion. That's just how I feel about it.
Coming to think about this deeply, looking at the sad ending where the child reaches a point of not wanting to see their parents even on their deathbed. So it rose a lot of concern, and it kind of rose something in my mind. What if we call the thing for what it is? Because this whole issue of going no contact can be resumed in one word that means unforgiveness. You've held grudges against someone who is your parent, and you are not ready to release them. At least give them a chance to say, I'm sorry, before they die. I don't think they will judge you even on their deathbed. So why do you really want to do this to your parents? And also, what's the whole essence of going no contacts? Isn't it to show your parents that you can have it without them? Or what the essence of going no contact? I understand, and I don't want to invalidate your feelings, but also, what I've learned in life that sometimes when people stay together longer, they tend to be confronted. Those confrontation happens. But when now you are distant from each other, there's that respect that grows out of nowhere. So I'm thinking about this, and I'm like, okay, you've got no contact enough. Kindly check on your parent. That's my advice to you, and this is my 2 cents on this. So the whole unforgiveness thing, grudges, forgiving is divine. I don't know who you believe in. Forgive. Stay low, no contact, whatever you want to call it, but at least liberate yourself. Because I've seen so many children going no contact, but they cry on the internet. Whenever they want to speak about it, they cry. It means they still feel that pain. For your own liberation, forgive your parents. Because forgiving is freeing yourself from a prison. That you are holding yourself captive. The person who has hurt you might not be feeling the same thing that you're feeling, but can you release yourself at least and forgive someone? This is your parent, for heaven's sake. Coming to say that when my father died, I felt liberated and I started living my best life. Hey, no thanks, kindly. These are my 2 cents on this. What are your thoughts? Leave them in the comment section. Let's interact. Until we meet again, but stay tuned for more. I appreciate you.